Michel Merle.
Merle.
Merle. Like you would say it in Finnish.
Merle.
Merle, yeah. It's Merle.
Michel Merle, okay.
Yeah, that's me.
Vi står här vid den påstådda ingången till Lemminkäinens tempel i Gumbostrand i Sibbo. Ior Bock påstod alltså att Lemminkäinens tempel skulle finnas begravd i den här berggrunden som vi står vid. Och under 1980 och 90-talet gjordes här också utgrävningar. Något tempel har däremot aldrig hittats. För tillfället är grottan vattenfylld, men templet påstås alltså ligga där under. Okay, I just had the introduction.
yeah, sure.
So, this is the book, the Bock Saga, an introduction. Can you tell me a little bit about this book? What is it about?
We started about 5 years ago, 5 years ago. We thought about what shall we do with the story that we have been listening to from 1984 up to Ior's death in 2010. So we get an enormous amount of information, but as long as Ior was there, we had a story with a beginning and a middle, but not with an end, because he was always coming with more and more and more information. So over many years, especially in the 21st century, we have not been giving out so much information on everything that has been coming in this period, on information. So after Ior's death, we was of course feeling very sad for the situation, but we also realized that the story had come to an end, or at least that part what he had to bring out. So that made us to sit and think for a few years that what has been happening now, and we decided that we want to keep this information for posterity. But it's so big information to give out that we decide that we need to make like an introduction to the story of Ior's family, in order to give an oversight of the whole story in a short form. Based on that, it becomes for us more easy to inform people about what we are doing, and people will get an oversight through this book that we have been making over the last 4 or 5 years, so that there is basically contained all the important information about the story. And we are in the process of organizing a website where we can give the story out in spoken form, where we will use the introduction as the script and then take all parts and explain them in sound based on the language of the root-speaking people, or what they today call Finnish Swedish, and the Finnish language, and we will do that in English to start with. So that website will give like the, over years to come, the totality of the story what he has been telling.
Can you shortly explain the story?
In a short form, in this story we divide the history in 3 periods. So that is the period we call the Paradise Time, which is the period before we get the Ice Time. And then we get the period of the Ice Time up to 10,035 years ago, when here in Finland the Ice Time finished and people had to leave this area and move to Gotland for 1,000 years and Öland and continue there before the nature settled in this area of Finland and they could move back here in Uudenmaa, and from there again restore Uudenmaa and again go out to the north, to the east, the west and the south, in order to create people in those lands that had been empty under the ice time. So the story basically tells all 3 periods of the human being, of before ice time, which we call the Paradise Time, then the time when the Earth axis flipped over, which made that we get what we in our story call the Altlandisch period, and the period of after Altlandisch, which is starting 10,035 years ago up to today. So basically it tells the whole history of the human being.
What was the second period?
The Altlandisch period.
How do you write that?
Alt means all.
Okay.
Land means land.
Yeah.
And is in this situation means the ice.
Yeah.
And alt land is in that way tells about the area where the ice has been. Because all the countries that end on land on our planet, they have all been under ice. If you come south from the ice, yes, like we have Finland, Rusland, Norland, Svealand, England, Ierland, Scotland, Holland, Saxland, Frankenland, Poland. All these lands are under the ice, and when you come south from these areas, the countries are called Spain, Argentina, India, Botswana. They're also countries, of course, land, but they don't finish on land. So the word alt land is telling exactly the period where in those areas the ice was lying on the earth, so people could not live there. Yeah? And in this area, here in Finland, it remained ice-free, the area around the Finnish Gulf, so the area of Uudenmaan, Estonia and up to Petersburg, because all the hot water from the Gulf Stream coming from the Caribbean in the period under the ice time ended up within the Finnish Gulf, and in the time even start to eat away the ice that was lying in the area of, let's say, where Petersburg is today, going up to Ladoga, Onega and the White Sea. So in the end of the ice time, Scandinavia become kind of, Finland, Scandinavia, become like an island. It was in that period not fastland connected to Russia. Then later on, when the ice disappeared and everything settled, when the ice that started to move 10,035 years ago, because there come one break in the ice north of the area of the North Cape. In that period, this ice that lies on Scandinavia is starting to shift south and is polishing the granite where we are sitting today, nicely smooth, polished. So that all this destruction that took place of the nature here was caused by the ice shifting over the land, taking all the stone and moving them over the Finnish Gulf to Estonia. So that is basically, it's a very long period in the history where there was only a small group of people who survived within this area, and that made them just like the animals who live in the very northern part of the planet to become more blonde with blue and green eyes. When south from this Outlandese area, the people, like from the Paradise time, developed into the different brown colors that they have in all these subtropical and tropical cultures that we find in the rest of the planet. I think, yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about the writing process for this book? How has it been writing this book? You said you started like 4 or 5 years ago?
Yes, about 4.5 years ago. I started with another good friend who has been following the story, Kevin Woods from Ireland. And we were thinking that we couldn't find really a way of how to bring this story in a concise form. So one friend of us, he came and said that he would like to make the book based on the stories that Kevin and I could tell about the Bock Saga. So we have been doing that and making endless amount of tapes, and out of all this information he has been making one story which we feel we can all stand behind as a basic oversight of the Bock Saga. So it took us about 2.5, 3 years to make Appie understand. The guy who made the book is Appie Borgen, and it took him about 2-3 years of information before he could understand it in such a way that he was able to make this book.
Where do you say he was from?
He's from Holland. He's living about 20 kilometers from where I stay at the moment. And Kevin is living in Spain, and he unfortunately can't move from that place at the moment. So we always went to him in Spain, and we spent time there, and we make recordings, and we discussed the content of the book, and how shall we make it, and blah blah blah. So he found a form, and in the end, in the spring, we got it ready, so that now we are able to, in a more easy way, inform people about first the basic content, and the full explanation will come in the near future on the possibilities that we have today with internet.
So you have like your 3 authors, right?
No, Appie is the author, and Kevin and me, gave the information. But the information that we have is also within a much larger group. But it becomes very difficult to make a book with 20 people and all their stories when everybody has, of course, different opinion on how we should make it. So in order to simplify it a little bit, the whole group found it really okay if we make it in the English language in the form that we made it. Yeah.
Can you say that name of the author again, like who wrote it?
The author is Appie Borgen.
Okay.
So you would say Borgen.
Yeah.
But,
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to write this book?
For us, the main purpose was to keep the story, because the story that Ior told us is the story of his family, and they have been transferring that as an oral tradition from generation to generation, and the whole story, the basic story that was transferred within the family, last 20 years. So 20 years time 2 hours a day. So nobody of us individually, if you take the whole planet, you can't sit with everybody and explain them what story for that last 20 years. It sounds like ridiculous. No? People have also other things to do. But we were friends from Ior already from before. I was already friend of Ior before we start with this story. And yeah, I found it interesting, and in the time more people arrived who have similar interest. So we became one group from 1987 who started with the project of opening Lemminkäinen temple, because according to the story of Ior's family, he had the right to do that from 1987. So from 1984 he had the right to bring out the story in over a 20-year period. But from 87, when we started really activity, always came one group of people who over many years have been following this story and supporting the project. So the main reason to make the book is that we want to keep the information because we feel it's very important, and in the same time it become more easy for us via this introduction of the saga to give people one book and say, hey, read the book, and when you know the content, also the questions can be made according to the info within the book. Yeah, because otherwise you have to start to explain an enormous story in 10 minutes, which is impossible. It is just impossible. But when you have an oversight, from that oversight we can go more deep into the content of the whole saga. Yeah.
And why do you think this story is important?
First of all, because we all who have been listening to it came to the understanding that it is the story of the human being, and unfortunately the human being has only a history of about 5,000 years. So if you go to look all over the planet, you can start to find all kinds of information in books, of course, and before that in cuneiform, in stone, and blah blah blah, different writing systems existing on the planet, very much in symbolism. But how to say, where did we go?
Why it's important?
Yeah, the question. What was the question again?
Why do you think Ior Bock Saga, the story, is so important? Like, why is this book so important?
Yes. it is important for us. The main reason was to keep the story, and out of that get one possibility to bring it out under a larger public. Yeah, because we are a relatively small group of people who have all the story in the brain, but also us get older, and after we are gone, we would like to have in that way the story available for future generations, so that they can also look deeper in the interest. So the relatively limited amount of information what we have on our history, like 5,000, 6,000 years of history, make that we have no idea of our origin. And this story is showing us our origin based
like
on
the humankind.
The humankind, based on the information from the saga. Yeah. So it is a story which is based on language. So the root language that is spoken here in the area of Uudenmaa, and the Finnish language which you found before outside of Uudenmaa. But today, when times have been changing, these two languages are still kept in the area of the south of Finland and in the archipelago in front of the coast. And of course, inland you still have the Finnish language spoken here in this small part of the world, where this story tells about a time from before, where we were like one global family, where all people were communicating in the language of your country, in Finland. And that made that they could transfer this story based on the individual meanings of the root sound that is spoken still today in the south of Finland. And for that reason it was for them relatively easy to keep the story going on over this enormous time span, because for us the sounds of the spoken language have a meaning within the Bock Saga, and this meaning was only kept within the Bock family, so that nobody else really knew about it. And especially when the times were changing and we were getting other information systems that took over, we basically lost the connection with our history from before, and we hope to reintroduce that so people again globally can get one conscience about our history, which has been obscure, but many people are interested to find out. And we want to help them to reach that point.
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, who is the book aimed for? Like, for who is it?
For anybody who is interested, so worldwide. So we are also starting to make it in different language. At the moment we have the book available in 2 languages. In the spring it was the English version ready, and in the meantime also in Germany has been made one, the same book but in German language, and we want to make it basically in all languages on the planet for those people who are interested. So it can also now be made if it's translated in those languages.
So if someone is not familiar with Ior Bock and the saga, what can they get out of this book?
In this book we have been concentrating purely on the information of the saga, so not so much about Ior himself or about all the things we have been doing here since 1984. It is pure the information that is contained within the saga, and the possibility we get through internet is to make it in spoken form, so that it can be again an oral story as it used to be, and in the same time via pictures and film and images we can always make the story more complete and more easy to follow for people.
So with the internet stuff, are you planning to do some kind of audiobook or something?
Yes, we want to make an audiobook, because we have also old friends who have been getting at the moment, who was here also in the 80s and the 90s, but they have been getting also much older, and they started to get problem with I, and now when we have been making the book, they are telling to me, hey, you have to make it in a spoken form because I can't read anymore, you know. So of course there is many people who have similar problems, and we want to make it into an audio book, so the same book just as an audio book also, but then with further explanation on all the details that are in the story. So in the end it will be quite enormous, but I hope we get the time of life to make it to that point, so that it can be kept forever, and we see what happens after.
Yeah, so this is the introduction, so
Yeah.
is there a planned sequel or something, like, are there other books coming?
No, this is the introduction only, so that contains the oversight of the whole story from Sampo and Aino or Frey and Freya up to today, or up to Ior's death. It was the story of his family, and it sounds very strange when you say such a thing, that I can understand also, but when you get into the information that is within this book, you get an oversight, and yeah, we want to bring it to the point where it can exist as in an oral form, so people can listen from internet about the whole story, but it makes no sense if you have not been reading or listening to the introduction. So this book in spoken form as a hear book can be like give an inspiration for people to get further information about it, but we still have to organize all that. So we are doing this is the first part we did.
Yeah, so after this book, there's still going to come other information on the internet, but you have to kind of read this before to know what you are talking about.
Yes, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. It is impossible to listen hundreds or thousands of hours of story. Of course you want to know where it's leading to, to keep your interest. So then it's better when you first have an idea on what it is about, and that we do in this book, and then we can explain this book fully over time in spoken form on internet. Yeah.
And so this book, it's been published already, or when is it going to be published? And where can you get it?
It is published already. This one you can get from. We have a website on the computer, which is www.bocksaga.info, and on that page you can order this book, and we have made one copy available via Amazon, which is printed on 5 continents in order to make the traveling distance between the place where it's printed and the person who wants to have it much shorter. So it's being it can be ordered and is printed on 5 continents, and people can order it everywhere on the planet and get this information. At the moment, unfortunately, only in English and German, but we have to start, and slowly. I heard just last week that they are making, maybe in Sweden, somebody who wants to make a Swedish version, and I know for sure in Finland somebody will make the Finnish version, and like that we can go on in the future. But we are from outside Finland, so for us it makes only sense to do it in English language, because Ior also told it to us in root, in Finnish and in English language, but in English to all his listeners, where he could slowly also explain that, hey, here by us in Finland we have one language which is very, very ancient, and also the Finnish language is the same ancient basically, because they are using the same sounds but in another form. So the root, or the rootsinkieli, as it's called today in many places by Finnish people, the rootsinkieli are actually people who are singing the root. The root is here in Finland, and they sing the root in Stockholm, and that everybody can hear. And the Finnish language and the root language both have the same alphabet, which based on Bock Saga have the same meaning, so you can go based on these meanings inside the language and get an understanding of the life of our ancestors from the past. I think that is quite what I can say about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to see what other questions I had. Yeah, so have you had any response from like the public? Like what's the public's interest been in this book?
There are many people all over the world who have been waiting for this for a long time. Many friends of us and many people that we have met in our lives, they are familiar with the story. But we did not have this full oversight of the story as long Ior was living, because there was all the time coming new information, what make the story to be again a little bit different and more complete. So it was very difficult to already before the time that Ior passed away in 2010, it was not so easy for us to give that oversight, because we didn't know by ourselves how it would end, or how far we had to listen in order to have enough information that we can basically explain it. Yeah, so outside of Finland there has been for many years also many people interested in this, and the response so far is quite positive, because we are bombarded by requests to get the book and the information in order that they can pursue their interest. So that's quite nice. And yeah, we have of course to wait and see how it goes. And we are continuing the project here on Lemminkäinen temple also. We want to make the area beautiful on the outside, clean it up so it looks nice, and then we hope that we get the support to continue the work on the inside, so that we can also reach the result what we look for. And it is taking a long time, but in our story nothing is made in 7 days. So we have to take it easy, step by step, because basically here under the ground are the artifacts that pertain to the history of the human being from before. And those people are all our ancestors, so it's in the interest of everybody. And I think it is good when we can show that we human beings have a very long history that is much longer than we can imagine at the moment, because we just don't have the information. And that is something, yeah, none of us could do anything for that. So when there then comes one person who gave us the key to the understanding of this whole principle of how our ancestors have been living on the planet, yeah, we were very grateful for it, because it definitely made us understand much more about ourselves and life in general by listening to the story that he told us.
Can you tell me a little bit more like what you now are doing here at the entrance to Lemminkäinen temple, like in like concrete way?
The project on the inside, so in the mountain, it's a very big project, so that's going to take time. But the outside that we started with the help of Heikki Hakulinen in the 80s, yeah, it came all to a stop. It was more starting and stopping and starting and stopping, and so in the period that Ior lived, we never came to a result. Yeah, well, after he was stabbed in 1999, we decided also that, hey, you know, it's not worth to start to dig here and there and everywhere when people get hurt in such a way, you know. So he anyway managed to finish the story, to tell it to us. He got the time to live to tell us the story, so we came to an end with that. And now basically we want to continue the work that he started 1987, or that we together started with all the people involved 1987. And we feel that first of all we want to make the area outside, so the visible area outside, in its original condition. So we want to make the place beautiful as it looked 1,000 years ago here in Uudenmaan, more than 1,000 years ago. And yeah, when we are that far, we hope that by what we can show in that time, when we come that far, that this place really is a very peculiar structure and very beautiful, and we hope that through that from the people comes the interest for, hey, now let's see what is in this cave, when we empty it from all the material it's blocked with, so that we can come to the Lemminkäinen temple and get a big surprise from there.
I'm just gonna have a question about when you told me about the story, and while Ior Bock was still alive, you couldn't write down the story because there was always something new coming. So, isn't there a risk that maybe there would still be coming something new, like if he was alive?
He would undoubtedly have been going on to tell us more story, but then again, the story what he told us over one period of more than 20 years was to give us the understanding that in which way you can work with the meaning of the sounds and the words in the languages of the root and baan, to be able to do just exactly the same thing as what he did. So we use this information in order to enlarge our understanding of the story. And of course, for him and his family, it was in a period of millions and millions and millions of years ago. And we have in the history book no access to that. That's only very severe and limited information that we have about times back. But the Bock Saga make it possible to get great detail of information on that period, and that is why we feel it is important, and we want to save the history that they left for us, because this family has died out, so there is not coming any new information about it.
So how do you feel now that the book is done?
It feels like 20 ton has been falling off my shoulder. Because of course you want to come to one result when you listen to such a story. And we tried for many years, but there have been many chapter units, and some we made by ourselves, and some are made by the outside world, who reacted or positive or negative to the story, because we could understand that for the outside world it was not so easy to understand, because not everybody has the time to sit down over such a long period to listen to one story, to learn about our ancestors, about the people who have been living and doing here in the past. So we could understand that. And in the same time, of course, when it then is lasting such a long period, also some frustration moves in, because you feel, hey, this is important and it doesn't happen nothing. So, let's see what we can do to spread information about the story, so that the interest is coming back again. By us it is there, has been there all the time, but now with the help of the information with this book and the things that we are still going to make, we hope that we can show to other people the same thing that we are interested in, and that is to come to one result about all the things that the Bock family has been leaving for us.
So is that what you hope you will achieve with this book?
I think so. It is. Anyway, if it's only a 200-page book, so it's not very big. But it's basic information. But if you go into that, and then you go to research within the languages that are up to today spoken here, you will find out so many things about the past that I can understand that it is also important for the people who live here to get a little bit more clarity on all this adventure that has been happening here in the last 35 years. Since Ior started to tell about this saga. So of course he was starting as, I get to know him also as Suomenlinnan oppas Ior Svedlin. And also for me, 10 years later on, when he say, hey, excuse me, but I have to tell you one story. I say, oh, that's nice, because you are usually telling stories about the 18th century, so of course I can listen to one more. And then he said, no, but this story is just a little different, it's something that has been kept in my family, and it is about the alphabet and the meaning. Now, I know that he didn't spend so much time at school, So I was already wondering that when he's starting now to tell about one alphabet, but basically he couldn't write so well either. You know, he was not really a champion in that. So he said, yes, but in my family we have been keeping one oral tradition, so I had to listen from 7 to 27, 2 hours every day to my mother and her sister who was transferring this knowledge from their parents and so on back in the history, you know. So yeah, we were traveling together and I was coming to visit him many times here in Finland. So I was already interested in this place because I learned much about it. So yeah, I felt good here also. It's nice to spend the summers in Finland, and yeah, we were both like to travel also. So he was making his program in India, preparing the new program of 18th century in the next year. And so I went there many times also to say hello, and you listen more and more and more. And then when he started with this story, I got interested very quickly because, of course, I knew him quite well. So I was not the one who said, that's all nonsense and just leave it. You know. So I had the interest, and that made that we spent with many other friends that appeared in the time where we listened to his stories, and it became bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it become also, yeah, there become many strange aspects in this story because we talk about a time that nobody know anything about. So of course you are then taken into doubt. People doubt you, because they can't understand. But it's not so difficult in the end anyway, that when you listen over one longer period of time, all this information start to make sense. So it was one learning process of something that we didn't know anything about, and he could tell very well. So in the end, we felt it was, we are very thankful to him for the stories that he left, and it was only a pity that during his lifetime we never came to any result, but that doesn't make the story for all of us less valuable. So we definitely want to continue with it. Yeah.
How did you initially start to how did you meet Ior Bock?
In 1974 we both made our first trip to India. He came from Finland to India and me from Holland. And we traveled. He traveled his trip, me mine, and on the way back we met in Quetta in Pakistan, and we traveled together up to Tehran, and we spent like 1 month and a half on the trip. And he took the train back from Tehran via Moscow to Helsinki, and I had to go to Western Europe. And by some magic I end up 6 months later here in Finland, and basically from that time, because I met Ior here again, and we became good friends, and we a year after went together to India, and we repeated that happening many times. So yeah, we already spent much time. We enjoyed each other's company, and from the moment that this story started, I had also in that time nothing special to do, so you sit down and you listen to your friend and what he has to tell. And it is really a strange story when he started to tell it, but because of all the detail that came, it became more and more and more real. And over time you also start to understand it.
I think that was all my questions.
Yeah, it is nice, you know, it is, I like it. I like this story because it gives us an insight into one period of the history where what most people on the planet don't know anything about. Mm-hmm. And that's very sad because that makes that when we have no history and we are trying to create a future, it is mainly experimental what we are doing because we don't know on what we are rooted, on what we are based. And this story gives us the possibility to reconnect with our history, and then hopefully we get a chance to make something beautiful out of this planet instead of blowing it up to pieces. You know? So that I think is in all of our interest, and that is why I feel this story is very important, because it is meant for everybody on the planet because we are all born from some sperm.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I'm just gonna see that it actually got recorded.
Of course, otherwise we do
Yeah,
it again,
yeah.
you know, no
40
problem.
minutes,
eh?
no problem.
I'm easygoing.
Yeah. No, it's here, so that's good. I would like to take some photos, like of you and of the book and all.
Perfect, and the place.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Really okay.
Can I look at the book?
Sure. I can give you this book if you want.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Can I take it? One of my coworkers said, like, if you get the book, like, can you please take it here to the, like, because he wanted to read it.
Yeah. No, you can take one, a
Thanks.
copy, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice. You are helping us to
Yeah.
help to bring the story forward.
Yeah.
So in that case, for me, you deserve one book. You
Yeah.
know?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And you can pass it further on to other people who want to
Yeah,
read
I'm gonna
it. So.
leave it at the at Yle where like,
Perfect.
I work. So
No problem.
yeah, so everyone can look
Yeah.
at it. Okay, but should we go and like,
Yeah.
take some pictures?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Oh, 5 seconds. I smoke a couple of
Yeah.
puffs from my cigarette.
Yeah. Where from the Netherlands are you?
I live 20 kilometers west from Amsterdam,
Ah, okay.
near the coast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was actually on exchange,
Yeah,
but in Groningen.
Groningen.
Yeah.
That is where my mother comes from.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like the city.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
really
it's
nice.
old town.
Yeah.
Groningen.
Yeah, it's a really nice town. Like
Yes.
it's not as big as Amsterdam.
No,
so
no,
it
it's
was
more
good
quiet.
for me.
All right.